You think discipline is something you turn on when things get hard, like it's a switch you flip when you feel ready, when you feel strong, when the conditions finally line up. But that's not how it works. Not even close, because the real test of discipline doesn't show up in those big, obvious moments. It shows up in the smallest, quietest, most forgettable moments. The ones you usually ignore, the ones you don't even register as important. And that's exactly why they control your entire life. Because in those moments, when you feel that slight resistance, that subtle hesitation, that internal pull to stop, to delay, to move away from what you said you were going to do, that's where your real identity takes over. Not the version of you that has goals, not the version of you that plans, not the version of you that talks about what you're going to become, but the version of you that actually acts, the version of you that responds under pressure. And if you're honest, that version of you has been giving in more often than not. You feel the resistance and you slow down. You feel the discomfort and you look for an easier option. You feel the pressure and you start negotiating with yourself, quietly, internally, almost automatically, telling yourself things like, "I'll do it later," or "This isn't the right time," or "I'll start fresh tomorrow." And in that exact moment, without realizing it, you make the decision that keeps you exactly where you are. And the dangerous part is how normal it feels, how justified it feels, how easy it is to move past it without questioning it, because you've done it so many times that it no longer feels like a decision. It feels like reality. It feels like who you are, but it's not who you are. It's what you've trained yourself to do through repetition, through reinforcement, through constantly choosing the same response when pressure shows up. Every time you felt discomfort and stepped away from it, you built that pattern. Every time you avoided something you knew you needed to do, you strengthened that response. Every time you delayed action because it didn't feel right in the moment, you made that delay more automatic, more natural, more expected. Until now, it happens without thought, without awareness, without resistance from you at all. And that's the real problem. Not that you don't know what to do, not that you don't have the ability, not that you don't have the time or the resources, but that you've conditioned yourself to react instead of decide, to follow impulses instead of control them, to move away from pressure instead of through it. And as long as that pattern stays in place, nothing changes. No matter how much you learn, no matter how much you plan, no matter how motivated you feel at the beginning. Because motivation doesn't show up in that moment. Discipline does. And discipline is not something you feel. It's something you execute in spite of what you feel. So now everything comes back to one point, one moment, one decision that repeats itself over and over again throughout your day. The moment you feel the urge to stop, the moment you feel the pull to delay, the moment you feel the resistance start to rise, that's where your life shifts. Not later, not after you think about it, not after you prepare more, but right there in real time. And right now, in your current state, there is no space between that feeling and your action. It's immediate, it's automatic, it's conditioned. You feel it and you follow it every time, without interruption, without awareness, without control. And that's why you keep ending up in the same place, because the same input leads to the same output when nothing interrupts the process. So the shift is not about doing more. It's not about pushing harder. It's not about forcing yourself into some extreme version of discipline that you can't maintain. It's about creating space, just enough space between what you feel and what you do, so that you can actually make a decision instead of reacting on autopilot. Because in that space, even if it's only a second, even if it's barely noticeable at first, that's where control exists. That's where discipline is built. That's where you either reinforce the old pattern or start creating a new one. And it's not dramatic. It's not intense. It doesn't look like some massive transformation. It looks small, almost insignificant. You feel the urge, and instead of moving, you hold. You feel the resistance, and instead of backing off, you stay. You feel the discomfort, and instead of escaping it, you continue forward anyway. Not because you feel like it, not because it suddenly became easy, but because you made a decision that overrides the impulse. And that's where most people fail. Not because they can't do it, but because they never practice it. They never train that moment. They never build that response. So when it shows up, they default to what they've always done. They follow the impulse. They give in. They move away. And then they wonder why nothing changes. But once you start recognizing that moment, once you start seeing it for what it is, everything shifts, because now you're aware. Now you can't pretend you didn't notice. Now you can't say it just happened without your input. Now you see the decision as it's happening, and that awareness forces a choice, whether you like it or not. Do you follow the same pattern, or do you break it? Do you react, or do you decide? Do you give in, or do you hold control for just long enough to change the outcome? And the more you choose control in those moments, the more you build it, the more you reinforce that identity, the more automatic it becomes, until eventually, the version of you that used to hesitate, that used to delay, that used to give in, starts to disappear. Not because you forced it out, but because you replaced it with something stronger, something more consistent, something more controlled. And this doesn't happen in one day. It doesn't happen perfectly. You will still feel the same urges, the same resistance, the same pull to stop. That part doesn't go away. What changes is your response to it. What changes is your ability to see it and not follow it, to feel it and not obey it, to experience it and still move forward anyway. And that's where real control comes from, not from eliminating discomfort, but from operating in spite of it, not from waiting until you feel ready, but from acting when you don't, not from avoiding pressure, but from staying in it long enough to build strength inside it. So now the process becomes simple, not easy, but simple. You win the moment over and over again. You don't think about the entire day. You don't think about the entire goal. You focus on what's in front of you right now, and you make the decision that moves you forward instead of holding you back. And then you do it again and again and again until it becomes your default instead of your exception. Because that's how identity is built. Not through big declarations, not through motivation, not through intention, but through repeated action in moments of pressure, moments of resistance, moments where it would be easier to stop, and you choose not to. So the next time you feel it, and you will, because it happens every day, multiple times a day, in ways you've been ignoring for years, you don't rush past it, you don't dismiss it, you don't pretend it doesn't matter. You recognize it as the exact moment where everything is decided and you respond differently. Because that moment is your life, repeated over and over again. And what you do in that moment determines everything that comes after it. So now the question is simple, clear, unavoidable. Do you follow the impulse like you always have? Or do you take control of it, even for a second, even just long enough to change your direction? Because that decision, repeated enough times, becomes your identity, and your identity becomes your results, and your results become your life. So decide carefully, and then act on that decision immediately, because the moment is already happening, and it's not waiting for you to be ready. It's waiting for you to take control.